Well, good morning and welcome back to our pilgrimage through the summer. Today is day 26 at the Institute for Priestly Formation and Friday of the 11th week of Ordinary Time. Today on campus we have the two programs that have been running parallel to each other for the last couple weeks. The spiritual directors who work at seminaries will wrap up their second week of their course, and again this week, as they have been doing all week long, they will focus in on the spiritual experience of the directee, learning as a spiritual director how to help the directee name some of the movements of their heart and stay in their spiritual experience as they speak about it. In the seminarians program, the men continue with their two classes. In fact, they wrap up their afternoon class today, that class on the spirituality of diocesan priesthood. They're going to focus on today the identity of the priest as good shepherd. Knowing that that was such an essential identity in Jesus' heart, they'll look at that identity within their own hearts. In the morning class, the seminarians will continue to learn more about just human and spiritual formation in their class on celibacy, and they're going to have a conversation today about something that's really important in their lives and something I think that's really important in all of our lives, and that is the presence of loneliness. It's really important that a diocesan priest know where to turn in loneliness. Celibacy is an amazing gift. It is not an easy gift. It's equally as difficult as living as a married person. And just like there are bumps on the road and moments of great grace and intimacy and sometimes some loneliness within marriage, the same is true in the life of a celibate diocesan seminarian or priest. So it's really important that a priest know where to turn in loneliness. Lots of traps out there, either working too hard or just kind of escaping into a world of technology or other ways to, you might say, run from the loneliness. So it's just really important that the seminarians know where to turn in their loneliness, knowing that God's with them always and that God wants to be a part of every part of their life, including the loneliness. And so if you were at IPF today, we would encourage you to ask yourself, where do you turn in loneliness? You know, I've been a priest for 13 years now. I've worked with lots of parishes and lots of lay people, and certainly in my own life I've come to know more about the reality of married life, and that sometimes the loneliest moment can be when you're actually with somebody and you just feel really, really distant from them, whether that's your spouse, whether that's your kids, whether that's your parents or your siblings. We often know what it's like to be in the presence of other people and yet feel so far away from them. Same is true with God. We can have deep desires in our longing just to know where God is in the midst of everything in life, and yet God can sometimes seem far away and we can feel lonely in our relationship with God. We can also feel sometimes lonely in the seasons of life. You reach a point in life where you're dealing with death or grief or going through midlife, or you come to the realization that life doesn't look the way you thought it would, or you're retired or trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life as a student. There are lots of seasons in life, and a lot of times we can feel as if people don't understand us, that they don't get us, we're not being heard, and in those moments it's easy for us to feel lonely in our lives. So just like a diocesan priest has to know where to turn in loneliness, you and I have to know where to turn in loneliness. Because the temptation is for us to turn in on ourselves, to isolate ourselves from other people, to isolate ourselves from God, to turn in on ourselves and attempt to be the source of our solution, to be the source of our pleasure, to be the source of just getting through the loneliness. We can turn in on ourselves. And of course we know that most often that doesn't lead to the type of freedom that we long for, or the type of liberation from loneliness. It certainly doesn't lead to a sense of consolation or deep joy. But if we turn instead of turning in on ourselves, if we turn toward God, even in the loneliness, even in the darkness, even in the feeling of I'm alone, if we can turn toward God, trusting that He's always with us, then our hearts are disposed to receive from Him even in those moments. So if you were at IPF today, we'd ask you to have courage today, to look inside your heart, to not be afraid, but to have the honest conversation about how do you handle loneliness and where do you turn in the loneliness. Now here's the good news. God's always turned toward us. Romans 8 reminds us that nothing can separate us from the love of God. He's always with us. He's always pursuing us. He's always taking the initiative and desiring us. Even if our senses tell us that, quote unquote, we're alone, our faith tells us that God's always with us, turned toward us. Where do you feel lonely? Or when do you feel lonely? And how do you respond to loneliness? Today, just today, instead of turning in on yourself, let's turn toward the Lord who's always with us. God bless you.